Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on literally the biggest sporting event on the planet. But look, we aren't here to talk about spectacular goals or legendary players or offside rules. Instead, we're uncovering a fascinating financial mystery that reveals the true economics behind hosting the World Cup. It's a story of staggering wealth, empty promises, and a money machine that works absolutely perfectly, just, not for the people you might think. Section 1, The Empty Stadium Mystery. Okay, let's dive into this and really understand this economic puzzle. To do that, we have to start by traveling to Brazil, specifically to a warm evening in the capital city of Brasilia. Picture this. We're standing in the Mané Garrincha Stadium, which is named after one of Brazil's most gifted players ever. It is a world-class, magnificent pitch. But during local club matches, it's virtually silent. If you were actually standing there, you could literally hear individual voices echoing across rows and rows of empty plastic seats. Today, its massive parking lot has actually been repurposed as a depot for city buses. Which brings us to a massive number, 72,000. That's how many seats were built into this colossal arena for the 2014 World Cup. Yet, on a normal day, barely 100 people show up for local games. Why? Well, because Brasilia doesn't even have a major professional football team to fill it. And here is the jaw-dropping part of all this. This stadium cost over $500 million to build. Honestly, some accounting puts it closer to $900 million. Now, you might look at this and think it's just a colossal failure of city planning. But actually, scratch that. It isn't. As we follow the money today, you'll see that a $500 million bus depot isn't some crazy mistake. It is the highly predictable result of a uniquely lopsided financial deal. Section 2, the FIFA revenue machine. To really understand this deal, we need to meet the primary suspect in our financial investigation. I'm talking about FIFA. They're the Swiss-based governing organization that owns the tournament, picks the host country, and most importantly, sets the terms of the deal. And this brilliantly illustrates how it works. Think of the World Cup not as a joint venture, but more like a massive touring concert. On one side, you have the promoter. That's FIFA. They keep the ticket money, the merchandise money, and the broadcast money, the whole shebang. On the other side, you have the city hosting the concert. The city has to pay for the traffic control, the extra police, and the ambulances on standby. So when the band leaves town, the promoter takes the cash, and the city is left holding the bill. So just how much cash are we talking about here? Well, in the 2022 World Cup cycle, FIFA generated a record-breaking $7.5 billion. Over $3 billion of that came just from selling television broadcast rights. Then you've got the sponsors, the advertising boards you see around the pitch, the premium hospitality suites, the tickets, the video games. Every single major revenue stream generated by the tournament flows directly uphill into one organization in Switzerland, leaving basically nothing from these streams for the host country. Now, you might be wondering, wait a second, isn't FIFA a nonprofit? Well, yes, technically under Swiss law, they are a nonprofit association, but as the saying goes, nonprofit in this case describes the tax status. It does not describe the bank balance. At the end of 2022, FIFA sat on a mountain of cash with nearly $4 billion in reserves, and their president took home a compensation package of nearly $4 million, plus a hefty bonus. The revenue is practically guaranteed for them before a single ball is ever kicked. Section 3, the host country's bill. So if FIFA gets all the revenue, what exactly does the host get? Well, they get the privilege of paying for the party. Let's shift our focus back down to the host country and examine the massive tab they're left holding once the month-long celebration ends. The reality is that the host city's responsibilities are agonizingly expensive. They are on the hook for millions in security, endless transportation upgrades, fan festivals, and massive cleanup efforts. But the real kicker here is the tax dynamic. To even win the bid, a host country has to offer FIFA staggering tax exemptions. When Germany won the bid for 2006, they had to offer around $270 million in tax exemptions just to secure the tournament. The money made inside your own borders largely leaves entirely untaxed. Politicians love to stand at podiums and promise voters that the tourists will come, the jobs will appear, and all this spending will magically pay for itself. But the hard economic data tells a completely different story. A University of Toronto study actually analyzed recent tournaments and found that 12 of the last 14 World Cups left their host cities with a net economic loss. The glossy forecasts never, ever match the final receipt. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is this massive number, $9.3 billion.
You might be thinking, well, surely the 1994 World Cup in the US was a success, right? Culturally, yes, absolutely. It planted soccer in American soil. But financially? Later estimates put the cumulative economic loss to the US host cities at up to $9.3 billion. Even the tournaments we remember fondly as immense commercial successes heavily drain the places that stage them.
So why does this happen? This economic drain basically happens for two recurring reasons. Step one is tourist displacement. The tourists who come for the soccer just replace the tourists who would have come anyway. Regular visitors actively avoid the host country because of all the chaos and the jacked up hotel prices. So it's not all new money, it's just swapping one tourist for another. Step two is what we call the white elephants. To win the bid, you have to promise massive, world-class stadiums. Remember our $500 million bus depot in Brazil? Other Brazilian stadiums literally had to host children's parties, religious services, weddings, and even serve as homeless shelters in unused locker rooms just to offset the crushing upkeep costs. And guys, the spending has only gotten more extreme. $200 billion. That is the estimated amount Qatar poured into hosting the 2022 World Cup. They took a country smaller than Connecticut, with summer heat reaching 120 degrees and almost no existing stadiums, and they literally built a national infrastructure. A new metro, an airport, highways, and 8 stadiums, essentially from scratch in the desert. But infrastructure of that scale in the desert doesn't just build itself. And the cost wasn't just financial. Qatar relied on a massive migrant workforce, largely from India, Nepal, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. In 2021, The Guardian reported that more than 6,500 migrant workers had died in Qatar since it won the bid. This reporting was drawn directly from government records from the workers' home countries. Now, it's important to note Qatar has disputed how these deaths were counted, stating many weren't directly tied to stadium construction. But while the exact number is contested, the staggering scale of the human stake behind this tournament is not. To put that into a sobering financial perspective, consider the $440 million in prize money handed out to the teams playing in Qatar. Amnesty International and other human rights groups actually pleaded with FIFA to set aside this exact amount, $440 million, to compensate the workers and their families. They simply wanted the money paid to the people who built the tournament to equal the money paid to the people who played in it. Section 4, Pride over Profit. Which brings us to a really fascinating final question. If this machine demands so much cash, risks so much, and leaves cities with multi-million-dollar bus depots, why on earth do countries still fight so hard to host it? To answer that, we have to look at what economists call the Germany 2006 paradox. Listen, Germany did everything right. They used existing stadiums, they were smart with fan zones, yet their financial reality was still bleak. They generated maybe $900 million in tourism income against billions spent. The measurable economic effect was tiny. But look at their real return. They got a famously joyful tournament. They showed the world a warm, modern, open Germany. They bought an image. They bought a feeling. So the crucial point was that the World Cup operates on a model of private gains, public costs. The massive financial upside is captured by a select few in Switzerland, while the enormous bill is spread across the public of the host nation. And beware, because this predatory machine isn't unique to soccer. You see the exact same script when the Olympics roll into town, or when a local billionaire asks a city to subsidize a new sports stadium with hundreds of millions in public tax dollars, promising jobs that rarely, if ever, materialize. And we're watching this play out again right now. The 2026 North American World Cup is happening across the US, Canada, and Mexico. It's the largest ever, 48 teams, over 100 matches. FIFA is projecting a record $13 billion in revenue for themselves, and the host cities, they're right back in the same lopsided deal, stuck covering the massive costs for security, transit, and policing. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want you to look past those vague promises of exposure and prestige. Whenever someone sells a giant project claiming it'll put your city on the map, they are selling you a feeling and calling it an investment. And look, buying a feeling is fine, as long as you know you're paying for pride, not profit. So, knowing what you know now about who actually keeps the money and who is left paying the bill, if your city could host the World Cup, would you really want it? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time.